It's the J Spotlight. You're listening to the J. Anthony Brown Show.
Welcome, everybody. It's yours truly, J. Anthony Brown, the J. Anthony Brown Radio Show. And my guest is
Tamra Simmons.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for coming on so much. Tell people what you did.
What I did?
Yes. No, not in that sense.
I don't know if I can tell them everything I did, but
yeah, in terms of the documentary, right?
Yeah, so I was the creator and executive producer of Surviving R. Kelly documentary, part 1 and part 2.
Let me ask you this: I've seen the R. Kelly documentary 1 and 2. Were you surprised with what you learned from doing this documentary, and did you learn anything you hadn't heard about before? Were you surprised in some of the things you learned?
Yeah, so well, one of the things I learned is that even growing up with Black parents, you're always told what goes on inside the house stays inside the house or in its private. And I didn't realize that, I thought that was just maybe my family that was like that. But when I talked to the survivors, at the time, they were telling me that they didn't tell anyone because they've been told also that if something like this happens to you, don't talk about it. No matter how old you are, kind of keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself, right.
And I was taken back by that because I was like, as a culture, I think that we have, we have made it to where we can't talk about those things. And it's causing internal damage within us in our own culture. And it needs to stop, because that's why we saw the white counterparts and speaking up against Harvey Weinstein and things like that, because people were overlooking the fact that it happens to Black women, or that Black women were in those positions. Or if they were in those positions, it's what did you do to put yourself in that position? What did you have on? Oh, you wanted to be with him.
What
because
did you say? Right, stuff like that, right.
Yeah, and so what I learned is that, we need to clean up our own culture before we ask someone else, why aren't you looking at Black girls? Why aren't we questioning everyone else when we're not doing it ourselves and we're not protecting ourselves?
Well, what amazed me about R. Kelly is, and it's pretty much not just R. Kelly, but a lot of people who have that quote unquote monster attitude or monster lifestyle, the creativity, this ability to be as creative as he was able to be. And are people put in a situation now where they can't separate what he did from his music, because his music is still being played? And what's the answer to that question?
Well, I think it's all a personal preference, because you may be listening to some other artists and not knowing what they're doing in their private lives. So I think people do, try to separate it. But once you learn it and then you hear the lyrics and you're like, this was what he was talking about. He was talking about these young girls during this time. I just personally can't overlook it. But that's just me, but I allow other people to, do whatever it is that they want to do. The documentary wasn't created to basically, put R. Kelly in a certain, or R. Kelly fans in a certain position to say, do you accept him or do you not? But it was basically to get the voices out for the Black women that have been affected because of it.
How much do you blame the people around him who had this ability to look the other way while this was going on, which is which happens a lot with anybody doing, even with Trump. Trump has this ability to do what he's doing. Hitler had the same ability. Bill Cosby had it, and also R. Kelly had it. How do you look upon the people who were surround him?
Well, that's the thing is, I don't think that he would have been able to do these things for all these years if he didn't have the enablers. So I believe they're as guilty as he is, because they were luring the women in as young girls, and there was a system that was set up. And so it was another shocking, moment for me, even while doing the discovery within the documentary, is that this system was built from years ago, my mother's generation. It was built during that time, and it just kept on. And I'm just like, how long was this going to go on before it stopped? Was it ever going to get stopped if the documentary wasn't done, or if these women didn't speak out? Would it have been stopped? Because in 2008, he had those allegations, and then 2017, new allegations come out. So you mean to tell me 9-10 years later, the same people were saying, 16, 17-year-olds were speaking out against R. Kelly that was speaking out against him in 2008. Like, it's just like there was a system set in place, the manipulation was set in place. And so those that were all involved and watch it go down and saw that it was happening, I feel that they are guilty as well.
It's such a fascinating subject in terms of people are glued to the tube to find out that the guy that they loved and cherished and danced to his music and his videos and stuff like that had this type of lifestyle. The other question, does R. Kelly admit to doing wrong? Next question is, will he get out, and should he get out?
Well, he made that song, that 19-minute song where he basically said he wasn't guilty. So that he was, going through all the allegations that were out there. This is before the documentary, and in that song, he said he wasn't guilty. I believe he still feels that he's not guilty.
Bill Cosby does too, right? Yeah.
So if he didn't feel like he was, if he felt that he was guilty, he would say, okay, let me serve my sentence and my time. But he has an attorney fighting for him to get out. That's what, makes me believe that he still feels that he's not guilty. As far as him being in jail and in prison for the rest of his life, I believe that for each survivor that he has victimized, he should, be able to, he needs to apologize to them, first of all. It's something that you can't really undo, but being in prison, I think that allows you to think about some of the things that you have done. So until he can come to grips with the things that he's done to women, I believe that he should stay there as long as possible.
From doing the documentary, have you been able to talk to the women before the documentary, and have you been able to keep in touch with them in terms of how they're doing now?
Yeah, before the documentary, I didn't know any of them. I learned and developed a relationship with each and every one of them and the families that were involved as well. And I've been able to keep in contact with most of them. They're on social media. I still follow them. I told them that they'll always probably receive like happy birthdays and Merry Christmas and all that stuff from me moving forward, because it's almost like, a family that was built around this. And you didn't realize that, the common denominator is R. Kelly, but what came out of it is I see some strong Black women. I love seeing how they move forward in their lives and doing things now that they were scared to do before because they just didn't have the courage to do so.
The other question is, are there people in your family that were not so much affected by R. Kelly, or maybe, in his tribe or whatever? Are there people in your family, in your close family, that were molested that that you have talked to? And if so, what's the relationship you have with them?
I haven't learned about anyone in my family. Like, I wasn't a victim of abuse or anything like that. And I don't know, I'm sure it has happened, but those family members haven't said anything to me. But if they were to say, I would be just like how I was with the survivors and make sure that they get therapy, because a lot of those women, they never told their story because they didn't think, number one, anyone would believe them. And number two, they just felt ashamed. So whoever has been molested, or whether it's my family or friends or people that I may meet later on in life,
no one has come forward and said anything. Were you an R. Kelly fan before you did the documentary?
I wasn't an anti-R. Kelly fan, but I wasn't a fan. I wasn't like a fanatic or anything like that. But I mean, I think at family reunions, I'm sure people played Step in the Name of Love, and I probably stepped to it, not knowing, but I wasn't a fan of it. But my mom and all them, my aunts and stuff like that.
Where are you from?
I'm originally from Tennessee.
Oh, okay, yeah. So,
like I have this little country accent.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm from South Carolina.
I try to work on it as much as possible.
No, leave it. Don't try to, because the internet and Zoom has made us have this ability to talk to everybody anywhere across the world. So you don't have to really change it.
Well, I live in Atlanta now, so I kind of, still a little Southern,
That's I hear a little ting in there, almost like a y'all is about to come.
Yeah, y'all is my favorite. Hey, y'all, how y'all doing? Yeah.
What made you do the R. Kelly? What made you, like, you're sitting around and what made you go, let me look into this a little more? What made you do that?
It was more of like, I'm in television, so I was working on Growing Up Hip Hop. The last season I worked on was the third season of that show. I helped franchise that show. So I was currently working on that show, and then I saw these allegations that came out, and I was just like, what is this going on? Like, I'm like, this is like a repeat. I remember of 2008 when I was in college, when all of it was, going on initially. And I was like, are they bringing this back up again? And I just, one of my producing partners, we go back and forth with different like ideas or trying to discover if something more is there or something needs to be brought to the forefront and built on put on a bigger platform. And so that was something that we explored together, Jesse Daniels and I. And so once we did that, it just, I saw the family that had the press conference, the Savages, and I actually live in Atlanta and they live in Atlanta. So I contacted them and I asked them if I could meet up with them. We developed a relationship like over a week or two, just talking on the phone. And then I finally went to visit them. And that's when I learned about the other survivors and victims of R. Kelly. I had no idea that it was that many people.
How many numbers, what are the actual numbers? And whenever you get a number like this, even connected with Bill Cosby, there are people that just won't talk. So the number is higher than whatever it is, the final number you have.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, we started out with 2 sets of parents and 2 survivors. And then from there, it just grew into 8 survivors. Then as you see in part 2, there was even more people that came forward after the initial documentary. But there were people, like you were saying, that, didn't want to go on record and talk about it, which we very much respected that and everything. But it ended up being, it was going to be a 2-hour documentary, and it was so
regardless. Yeah, it could be a 3-hour because it's just so much.
It ended up being
so much
6 hours.
Information. Right. Yeah. Right.
It ended up being 6 hours, but initially it was like going to be a 2-hour, but it was so much information to unpack, and it was just overwhelming.
Right. What's who will you investigate next?
Well, first of all, I'm not in
if you can talk about it.
But no, I'm working on a social justice project. As you know, like the Black Lives Matter movement that has been going on. And it was actually a project that I was working on before Surviving R. Kelly. And it's about, Black men in Atlanta that have been unfortunately killed due to police brutality.
Oh, yes.
So I'm currently working on that and making sure that project actually sees the light of day, because we're so quick in, today's society for Black Lives Matter to matter today, but not tomorrow. I want to make sure that Black Lives matters forever.
It is amazing how white people thinking, when I say white, I hope nobody gets offended who's watching this, the fact that we're speaking up for the fact that our lives matter means that your life does not matter. And we're only saying Black Lives Matter in a sense of having a chant or something to rally around, because we've almost never mattered. And we're not saying your life does not matter. We're saying Black Lives Matter. It's almost, now you see that we matter, and you're getting upset because this is something that we want. Here's a problem. One of the problems I have with R. Kelly, I don't have any problem with his music, but I do have a problem with him still being in jail for what it is he did, that he's still profiting off of his music. And most times when you go to jail, it should be that you're not allowed to be in jail and profit. He just got a large lump sum of money. Mm-hmm. That money should be divided to his survivors or people who were infected by him. And what are the chances of maybe changing stuff like that?
Well, yeah, that's really, I'm working with like several different attorneys on changing laws. I actually went to law school, probably should have finished. But
you did pretty good with a law degree. You really did.
But I was an arbitrator for like 8 years, so I have a legal background. But I'm working on also like the prison system and changing some of the laws to be able to because there's people who have like small charges that are like serving 25 years, then you have someone that has molested a child that serves a year and then they're out on probation for 5 years. Like those sentences need to be reversed. And so that's what I'm currently working on with attorneys and DAs within the, state of Georgia.
The other question I have, and I don't know if I'm wording this right, but even in the sense of R. Kelly, what are you doing to teach girls, young girls, that connecting, say you're 16, 17 years old, 14, 15. What are you saying to young girls to try to stay away from the trap that's already set up from them, that this is not glitter and glamour, and just because he's taking you to the mall and shop? How are you speaking to young girls to not to look over in that direction?
Well, a lot of it is self-confidence. especially if young girls come from like broken homes and they don't hear the words "I love you" or "You're great" or "You're amazing," and so they have. R. Kelly is a person who is a predator for those type of girls. He'll ask questions about their family and things like that. So what I'm doing is speaking to young girls and mentoring them one-on-one privately, and publicly also, and ministering to them and mentoring to them as far as how great they are, why they were created, and impacting like love and self-love and confidence in them. I think that especially like I have a daughter myself, and so I tell her like, you can do anything you want to do. You can be anybody you want to be. Don't let somebody tell you that you can or can't. It doesn't matter what background you come from. It doesn't matter if you have a mom and a dad, or if you have just a mom or just a dad, and don't look for other people to validate you. I think that was a lot of it, is like validation. Some people just want to be validated, but you can validate yourself. Just look in the mirror and say, I am beautiful. I am great. I am awesome. I am amazing. I am going to be who I want to be. Like, you have to do that.
Well, these programs that you speak of, they're very important, and they're also important in terms of talking to boys, because boys are being victimized by predators just as much as girls are being victimized as predators. By predators, but it's we do need, especially as Black people, we do need people to speak up and tell them that this danger is out there, and what traps to look for, so that you don't get sucked into that type of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It happens to men and women and boys and girls, and even after the documentary, our Lifetime has a domestic violence and sex hotline, and that the numbers went up. And even on part 2, the numbers went up even more than part 1, with people calling in and wanted to get help. And it wasn't just girls or women, it was boys and men as well, saying that they've been affected. And there were people that DM me on, Instagram and things like that, and told me that they were a male and they were affected by, other men in the industry, and also men that are not in the industry. And that's what I want people to know. This doesn't happen just in music, just so happens.
No, it happens in the church, it happens in school, it happens on the job, it happens, uncles, aunts. Predators are out there. That's why it's so upsetting with this Underwood lady that's on trial. I can't think of her name. The one that the guy killed himself. Well, she was a girl that, what I'm talking about.
Like Gazane.
Yes. Well, she's called his setup person, but basically she's a pimp.
Yeah.
In everyday terms, she's a pimp, and it was I was not amazed, but it was just shameful where the president would go on television and wish her luck. All right. Well, this has been a fascinating. I could talk to you for 2 or 3 hours about this.
Well, you said my desk was messy, so
I didn't say that. I said messy people create. All right, that's what I said. But anyway, where can people keep up with you? And the last question is, were you surprised about the reception of this documentary?
Yeah, I was surprised by the reception of it, and I even try to prepare the survivors and say, hey, if it's just me and you that believe, I believe you. That's okay. But when the world accepted it and was just hey, how can we help, and reaching out to them personally, I was just taken back, and I was like, this is why I like to create meaningful content, because it's all about seeing positivity. And even though people were like, oh, Tamra, you trying to bring down a Black man, what's wrong with you? You're a Black woman. I said I can take that all day long as the survivors, their hearts are healed and their souls are healed. And that's the most rewarding thing. All these other accolades, MTV Awards, Emmy nominated, I'm like, I don't even like to put on makeup and go to a red carpet.
Well, I understand, and it doesn't matter what you do. Haters, but you quote unquote haters are gonna be out there. You're gonna get ridiculed for whatever type of creativity.
You can get ridiculed for just your name being Tamra. Why'd your mom name you Tamra? That's so ugly. We're like, okay, thank you.
How long did it take you to put this together from start to finish?
I feel like it took a lifetime, but according to the record, it took about 2.5 years, which, I spoke in Australia, and they were saying, oh my God, how did you do it so fast? And I'm like, what? That's right. 2.5 years of my life I don't even remember, to be honest.
Yes.
You know? But so every day seemed like a year, a month to me. But
when you finish, I notice for me, when I like write a joke or write a little bit or a skit and you play it back, you go, oh man, I should have put that.
I know, yeah.
Oh, why didn't I put that in? Oh, no.
Yep. And you know, and in part 2, you know, there were some things that I was like, can we do this? Can we do that? But you know, for legality reasons, there's certain things you can't do. You have to, like, in legal, we had a really big, you know, robust legal team, and they just kept asking me over and over the same questions. And of course, I'm like, listen, I sent this email back in March. Like, go back but then after the documentary came out, I'm like, oh, that's why legal was asking me that. It makes sense now. But before, I was like, I'm like, stop asking me. That's what I wanted to say. But I was
there will be and there will always be a war between legal and creativity. Yeah, there will always be a war between legal and creativity, because as a creative person, you go, well, I'm gonna say this, and legal will, I don't think you want to say that.
Let's go back and shut down everything. They're like, nope, you can't say that. No, you don't have any evidence. No, you don't have any witnesses. I'm like, but I don't have a story then. You know, you take all that out and there's no story.
Well, you did a fantastic job, as the rewards and accolades will prove that. But not only that, you gave people who didn't have a chance to speak a chance to speak, and it's up to the public to decide. Well, I believe them. You know, I believe them. I believe, you know, to separate the music that he created from the lifestyle.
It's so hard to put everyone's truth in like a certain time frame, you know. So you it's like they almost had to have their own each individual one to tell their story. That's why I encourage them to write books, because that's therapy too, you know. Like there's some stuff that you can't release, and there's some stuff that you wish that you said and you didn't get out. So I encourage them to like write books or just write it down.
Write it down. Thank you. Well, thank you. Tell people how they can keep in touch with you, as if you need more email and more texting.
I'm on all social media platforms as Tamara Simmons. On Twitter, Instagram, it's the Tamara Simmons. Facebook is just Tamara Simmons.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, man. This has been a fascinating interview. I'm riveted about how the process of creating something like this, and when you see the person behind it, you know, because sometimes you see a creative piece, but you never see the person. You never get an understanding of what it takes to put something like together. And not only that, it's so inspiration to girls and guys or young kids who say, "Let's see you," and they go, "Well, you know, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, Z. She did it, then I can do it." And thank you so much.
That's what I encourage them. Like, if you have a vision, go for it. Don't let nobody talk you out of it.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The JSpotlight. I repeat, wanna go to church with the same suit you wore last Sunday. Get your laugh on. The JSpotlight. Watch out there now.